could say he doesn't speak a word of Hebrew, but he basically doesn't speak a word of Hebrew. Can't make it. They simply didn't want it badly enough. Maybe look into the fact that they believe that if you're walking on the street and you see a woman, you should spit in her face. Do you agree with them on that too? The West has not yet understood what radical Islam is about. Welcome back to From Tech to Tanks. You know, there's a lot of things we need to talk about, but there's something that I think is more urgent than anything, and that is the current state of anti-Semitism around the world and what that means for Jews. You know, every time we record, I say, had I told you that ABC would have happened, you would not have believed me. What's gone on globally is genuinely hard to believe. I mean, Jews can no longer walk around the streets of the West safely. And if they do, and if they can, it's only by hiding any identifying thing that shows that they're a Jew, whether it's a Magen David, whether it's a yarmulke, whatever it may be. If a Jew walks around in Paris, in London, in LA, in New York, in Melbourne, I mean, the list just goes on, and they have a kippah on their head, good luck. I mean, we saw a massive protest in Sydney on a rainy day that hundreds of thousands of people came out for, waving actual ISIS flags, flags of Hezbollah, flags of Hamas, literal terror-supporting people by the hundreds of thousands. I mean, we have Jews being kicked off of planes. We have synagogues being firebombed and vandalized and burned down. We have literal, every single thing that has gone on in the world or that went on before the Holocaust has happened. It's all happening. I mean, you basically have anti-Semitism institutionalized. I mean, you have people spitting on Jews, harassing Jews, assaulting Jews in the streets, and cops standing by and doing nothing. You have actual parliaments and political leaders rewarding the savages of Hamas with a Palestinian state. It's hard for me to even say those. It's hard for me to believe that this is happening. But not only do we have the sick Australian government and France and Canada and other ones, but even Germany. Germany. I mean, really Germany. I would sit this one out if I were you. Unbelievable. So anti-Semitism has reached a whole new level, which means that at the risk of being called and accused of being alarmist, Jews need to get out. And I don't mean, only in Australia. I mean Jews of the diaspora need to start making an exit plan, because it seems to me that it's all happened. The only thing that hasn't happened is Jews being rounded up and brought to death camps. So if that's what you're waiting for, then you're a fool. So let's talk a little bit about what's called Aliyah, Jews immigrating to Israel. I've heard a very, very, very long list of reasons why a Jew should not move to Israel. Of course, it's all coming from my friends in the diaspora who, it's called confirmation bias. And I don't judge them. I love them, want them to come here, but they're comfortable, or they were comfortable in their homes in Woodmere and in Lakewood and in LA, Pico, and right? They have little ghettos, basically. Every time I go there, I'm a little bit nauseated. Like, the amount of wealth, the amount of infrastructure that they've built is kind of nauseating, because clearly they have not realized this is not their home. This is their home, Israel. So I want to just go down the list of some of the things that I've heard from my friends about why they cannot make Aliyah, why they can't move to Israel, why it's too hard for them. And I want to debunk them one by one, because basically they're all simply not true anymore. Keyword, anymore. So let's just talk about this. First thing, where would I live? I can't afford real estate. False. It used to be true, but it is unequivocally false to say that real estate is more expensive in Israel than it is in the United States. Where? That's the question. Where? If you're going to live in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem, then you're right. Real estate is very expensive. But if you're living in New York City and you want to live in Petah Tikva, absolutely false to say that real estate in Israel is more expensive. There are thousands of communities where someone can make Aliyah and live a very comfortable life without spending an arm and a leg. Whether it's Petah Tikva, whether it's Karmei Gat, whether it's Beit Shemesh, which has increased in prices over the last decade or two, but it's still extremely affordable. Modi'in's a little more expensive, but still affordable. It's true, Ra'anana is not affordable, Caesarea is not affordable, Tel Aviv is not affordable, Jerusalem is not affordable, but there are hundreds, thousands of locations where a person can move from the United States or from anywhere in Europe, buy real estate in Israel, and live completely happily and comfortably. I mean, I live in a community, basically 100% exclusive Olim, people who moved to Israel, none of which came as millionaires. They came with, some savings, and they live very well here in Beit Shemesh. So the statement that I can't afford real estate in Israel, it's just not true. It used to be true. It is just not true anymore. You could live very happily and you could afford real estate in many, many places in Israel. Next, but I don't understand Hebrew. I don't have the language. How am I going to get along there? Let me tell you something. I do not have Hebrew on my computer. I have not written an email in Hebrew in years. In fact, I find myself sitting with Israeli entrepreneurs, and I've been here for 30 years, so my Hebrew is as good as my English. And I find myself sitting at a table with an Israeli entrepreneur speaking in English. The entire business sector conducts itself in English. Every single sign in Israel is in Hebrew and in English. And in Arabic, by the way, for that whole apartheid claim, putting that aside right now. You can absolutely get along in Israel perfectly without Hebrew. In fact, you can't see him, but behind the camera right now is a friend of mine who lives in Israel very happily. I don't know if I could say he doesn't speak a word of Hebrew, but he basically doesn't speak a word of Hebrew. And he'll be the first to tell you he's living the best life here. So you absolutely do not need Hebrew to live in Israel. Will it help? Sure. When you're standing at work around the water cooler and schmoozing and socially, of course it helps. But can you get along fine in Israel without Hebrew? Absolutely. Zero question whatsoever. Okay, next. What am I going to do to make a living? I can't make a living in Israel. I have to cut my salary in half. False. In fact, I don't know if I could say this on camera. You know what? I'll say it. I approached someone, not going to name names, who works at Nefesh B'Nefesh. If you're not familiar with Nefesh B'Nefesh, it's an incredible organization that helps streamline the process of Aliyah. It helps minimize all the bureaucracy of getting, an Israeli ID, getting an Israeli phone number, all of that. It helps to streamline that process. I had spoken to a friend of mine, very senior at Nefesh B'Nefesh, and I didn't yell at him, but I all but yelled at him, and I said, listen, if I get one more phone call from an American who says to me, I was told by Nefesh B'Nefesh that if I come to Israel, I have to lower my salary or cut it in half, who's telling people this? And he looked at me like I fell off of Mars, and he goes, I have no idea who's telling people that. I said, well, it's your team telling people that. He said, well, I'll look into it, because it is no longer the case whatsoever. And I'm going to say something perhaps a little bit over the top right now, but please understand that what I'm about to say is not, to God forbid, flex, but rather to emphasize the point. And that is that I, Hillel Fuld, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. In fact, one might say I have no hard skills. All I am is a guy who loved tech many, many years ago and started writing on the internet, started meeting entrepreneurs, doing my thing. And on October 6th, the day before I shut down my business, October 7th, on October 6th, my business, which was basically a one-man show, was generating $160,000 monthly. Monthly. Now, did I do any magic, any sorcery? No. I worked hard and I'm good at what I do. Anyone can make money in this country. Now, it's true that if you're a doctor and you're living in America making zillions of dollars, that you will make less money here because it's socialized medicine. But if that's the case, there are many things you can do. For example, you can keep your job, you can travel, you can work remotely, or you could find a job here and make less money. That's true. If you're a lawyer, chances are that's the case as well. Other than those two professions, almost no other profession is it true to say about that they have to cut their salary in half. It's just not true. If you work in the business sector, if you're in marketing, if you're in sales, customer success, obviously if you're an engineer, you absolutely can make as much money here as you make there. And if you're really good at what you do and you're willing to work hard, you can make more money here than you make there. And I'm, again, saying this from experience, okay? That's as far as making a livelihood in this country. You absolutely can make good money. But, with my anecdotal experience, I don't have the data to back this up, I haven't done the math, but I can tell you, when you take everything into account, especially if you're a religious Jew in America who's sending their kids to yeshiva, to summer camp, who's paying for healthcare, I think, again, I don't have the data to back this up, but I think as a whole, if you take living in Israel versus living in America as a religious Jew, I think it's 100% accurate to say that living in Israel is cheaper. Meaning, even if you have to lower your salary, you can live on less in Israel. There's no keeping up with the Joneses. There's no, look who has the bigger house, who has the fancier car. It's just not part of Israeli culture. And so you can come here, and you could give up on your BMW or your Lexus and drive around in a Toyota Camry, a Toyota Corolla, whatever it may be. Yeah, it's true. But if that's how you're measuring quality of life, then there's a bigger problem than that. So the point is, you can make a living here, but even if you have to lower your salary, you can live an amazing life in this country on less money. That's been my experience. Then there's the whole religious thing of I'm living here in Lakewood, my kids are sheltered, very religious. If you go to Israel, They're going to see all these secular Jews. They're going to see all these earrings and piercings. And I want my kid to stay religious, so I don't want him to go into Israel and become less religious. When I hear this, I honestly just, I want to give up. I'm like, what is wrong with Jews? Okay, and let me dissect this from a few different perspectives. First of all, let's talk about the Israelites in the desert. We know the story of the spies, right? God said to the Israelites, go into the land of Israel. And they said, you know what? We'll send spies. We'll send 12 of the biggest rabbis into Israel, 12 of the heads of the tribes. Famously, 10 of them come back and say, you cannot go into this land. It's impossible. The nations there are too strong. You won't make it. You can't do it. 2, Yoshua and Kalev came back and said, what are you talking about? Tovah haaretz ma'od ma'od. The land is beautiful, and it says ma'od ma'od, very, very beautiful. Something you do not see anywhere. They emphasized how amazing the land is. Now, this begs the question, how could it be the 10 of the biggest rabbis heard from God to go into the land and they said, nah, we're going to stay here? How could that be? What was their narrative? What did they tell themselves? Now, I wasn't there, so I don't know, but I can tell you, if I'm thinking about this logically, it makes all the sense in the world. These guys are in the desert, right? They have food coming from the heavens. They have clouds of glory protecting them. They have water coming out of rocks. They have incredible miracles. They have a direct line of communication with God. They are very religious. God says, go into this country, build an economy, build an army, build a society. And they're like, you know what? I'll stay religious here in the desert. And that is exactly, and by the way, the spies and the entire generation for listening to the spies was punished for that. And this is exactly what my friends in the diaspora who are more religious are saying. We'll come back when Mashiach comes. Right now, it's a secular country. We want to stay religious. And I got to tell you something. I'm going to read something to you right now. That's not my opinion. I'm going to read something to you right now from the Talmud, okay? From the Gemara, point blank. This isn't, debatable. There's no way you could present this any other way. And I'm going to read it to you. This is in the Tractate of Ksuvos on the Daf Kuf Yud, 110, okay? Amud Bet, the second side of the page. I'm going to read it to you, then I'm going to translate it to you. This is a Gemara. Le'olam yadur adam be'eretz Yisrael. A Jew should always live in Israel. Afilu be'ir sheruba goyim. Even if a city is the majority of a city is Gentiles. Ve'al yadur b'chutz la'aretz, and a Jew should not live outside of Israel. Afilu be'ir sheruba Yisrael. Even in a city that is the majority are Jewish. Listen to this. Shekol adar be'eretz Yisrael. Anybody who lives in Israel, dome k'mi sheyesh lo Eloha, is like a person who has a God. Ve'kol hadar b'chutz la'aretz, and any Jew that lives outside of Israel, dome ki'ilu oved avodah zara, is like a person who is worshiping idols. This is the Gemara. But it's not just the Gemara. The Ramban, Nachmanides, he says that any mitzvah that a religious Jew does outside of Israel is just practice. It's true that the Rambam, and I'm getting really deep into this right now, it's not for now, but the Rambam, Maimonides, doesn't list living in Israel as one of the 613 mitzvahs, and there's tons of literature written on why that is. But the consensus is that, of course, the Rambam understood that living in Israel is a mitzvah. So why didn't he list it? Because it's such a general mitzvah that we have endless mitzvahs that are dependent on living in Israel. It was so obvious to him that there's a mitzvah to live in Israel, he didn't even mention it. Okay, we could debate that. It sounds a little funny. Whatever. The point is, the vast majority, almost all of the Torah authorities of the past, I don't know how many generations, said that it is a mitzvah to live in Israel. In fact, I watched a video which blew my mind. It was a video quoting Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who recently passed away. He was the leader of one of the greatest Torah scholars of our generation, if not number one. And it was a video by a rabbi, a well-known rabbi, who was basically telling the story of all of the questions that he asked Rav Kanievsky about Israel. And again, Rav Kanievsky is Haredi, ultra-Orthodox. It's not exactly the most Zionist people in the world. Some of the questions he asked him are absolutely mind-boggling. Things that are very similar to the Gemara, to the Talmud I just read you. Basically, he said, if a rabbi is in America and he's a chief rabbi, right, or whatever, and if he comes here, he has to be a street cleaner. Should he come to Israel? And he said, a street cleaner in Israel, this is what he said, a street cleaner in Israel is more righteous than a chief rabbi outside of Israel. This is not, me or some random dude saying that. This is one of the greatest Torah giants of our generation. Okay, he talked about if a rabbi is the head of a yeshiva in America or wherever, and he's bringing endless Torah learning to there, should he come to Israel? And the answer was unequivocally, of course. No question whatsoever. It was a video, maybe I'll share it here down below in the comments, but it was a video that was pretty extensive about this rabbi speaking to of Chaim Kanievsky about this topic, about moving to Israel. And this isn't something that he said one day when Mashiach comes. This is now, okay? So from a religious perspective, the whole I'll stay here and remain religious is literally copy-paste what the Meraglim, what the spies said in Egypt. So there's that. What other pushbacks have I heard about making Aliyah? Israelis are rude. Well, okay, all right. I was eating a hamburger in Tel Aviv and the honking didn't stop. So you know what? I put that under the category of Eretz Yisrael Niknes B'Yisurim. Israel, the state of Israel, the land of Israel, is acquired through hardships, let's call it. Okay, there are some hardships. No one's saying you have to pick up tomorrow and come here and everything's going to be easy. Absolutely not. In fact, I want to address that point because whenever I do write posts about Aliyah, that's one of the biggest pushbacks I get, which is stop pretending it's so easy. It's not so easy to pick up 100%. 100%. You built a life in Woodmere, in Muncie. You can't just pick up and come here. True. That being said, two things to say about that. Number one, if you had a gun to your head, an actual, like physical gun, not a metaphorical gun, an actual gun, and the person holding the gun said to you, listen, you're either on an El Al plane in 1 hour from now, or I'm pulling the trigger, killing you and your family. You'd be on a plane. Well, what about where am I going to make a living? Where am I going to live? Where am I going to send my kids to school? What about all the justifications that we just talked about? What happened then? The answer is you have a gun to your head. And you understand that it's life and death, which means that you don't think that what's going on today in the world, as far as anti-Semitism is concerned, constitutes a gun to your head. Then the question is, well, then what does, right? So that's, a very important point. Think about that. But more importantly, more fundamentally, it's not easy to come to Israel, therefore I won't come. Okay, well, do you say the same thing about keeping Shabbos? Do you say the same thing about keeping kosher? It's not easy, so I won't do it. What happens if, for whatever reason, okay, let's say back in the day, you had to work on Shabbos, or else you wouldn't make a living. So would you say, it's hard for me not to work on Shabbos, and therefore I'm going to work on... Whoever told you being a Jew is easy? Whoever told you that the mitzvahs, keeping the commandments of the Torah, is easy? No one ever told you that. And Israel is no different. Okay, it's a little harder. Maybe it's not a great comparison. It's a little bit harder to come to Israel and to keep Shabbos. I agree. But no one said it's going to be easy. And no one said you have to do it tomorrow. But also, don't wait till it's too late. And you don't think it's ever going to be too late? Then you're a fool. Open history books. There's only one thing that hasn't happened, and that is that anti-Semitism is fully institutionalized and Jews are rounded up. That's basically the only thing that hasn't happened. Everything else has happened. So yeah, it's not easy. And I'm not saying you have to do it today because, you have elderly parents, you have kids with special needs, great. Everyone has circumstances. I'm not belittling or diminishing that or dismissing that. It's all valid. But at the very least, make a plan because you are simply not safe there anymore. And again, I'm sorry to be an alarmist, but if someone had told my grandmother that or any other Holocaust survivor in 1930 and said, listen, the writing is on the wall, look what's happening, get the heck out. And if only one had listened, that would have been a life saved. And if only one person would have raised the flag and written posts and done videos like this before October 7th and warned about what's about to happen, and one person would have listened, that would have been a life saved. So yeah, call me an alarmist all you want. But if one person listens, and I've already had hundreds of people listen who have told me either they're making Aliyah, have made Aliyah, or are strongly considering making Aliyah because of my post, so I'm going to take it. And you're going to want to call me an alarmist, call me hysterical, call me whatever you want. The reality is that had I posted on social media in 1930 that there's writing on the wall, people would have called me an alarmist and told me I'm hysterical. That's the reality. So maybe I am an alarmist, and maybe I'm wrong, and nothing would make me happier than being wrong. But the reality is, the writing is very much on the wall. The only thing I'm doing is reading it out loud. So it's time. Anti-Semitism is not the reason to make Aliyah. It might be a catalyst. It might be a trigger. The reason to make Aliyah is because this country is spectacular. And I'm not talking spirituality. I'm not talking about going to the Kotel. I'm not talking about that. That goes without saying. I'm talking about quality of life. I'm talking about raising your kids in an amazing community. I'm talking about Torah values. I'm talking about a emphasis on education and the family unit. And there's no race to materialism. None of that exists in Israel. Israel, today in 2025, is an incredible place to live. And I'm going to say something somewhat controversial, but I firmly believe what I'm about to say. And that is, in 2025, remember, in 2025, I'm not saying in 1980, in 2025, if someone moves to Israel and can't make it, they simply didn't want it badly enough. I'm putting aside the exceptions to the rule of people who have specific circumstances who need to get a certain treatment in America. I'm not talking about that. But a normative, regular family that moves to Israel and can't make it simply didn't want it badly enough, which leads to an important point. You need to come to Israel, you, my friend in the diaspora, you need to come to Israel not because there's anti-Semitism. You need to come here because this is your home. This is your home. And if that's your mindset, that you realize you need to come home, then everything else will fall into place. And I'll tell you a story that happened to me a few weeks ago. I got a phone call from a couple who the husband wanted to move to Israel, the wife didn't, but he convinced her and they moved here. But she was, pretty much anti, and she was looking for any excuse. And they had some, I don't even know, altercation in the supermarket where someone Israeli was rude to them. And the husband called me and said, we're leaving, we're going back. I said to him, really? But the reality is that they came with a mindset of everything's gonna be perfect. And if that's your mindset, then yeah, you're not gonna make it here. But if your mindset is, this is where you need to live because this is your home, then you'll make it here. And if you don't, then you didn't want it badly enough. Not to mention the fact that I'm talking the whole time about how you need us. Dude, we need you. Who do you think you are sitting in the diaspora as we send our children into the battlefield where their soldiers are being killed almost on a weekly basis, and you're sitting there in your Western home on your flat screen TV driving your Maserati? How are you not ashamed? We need you, but you also need us because you are part of the Jewish people. And you need to come here and you need to get out of that cesspool and that swamp over there where anti-Semitism is getting worse by the day. This isn't just we need you, you need us as well. You need us, we need you. We need you to fight this war with us, whether you go to the army or you do something else, we need you here. And another pushback I get is, what, Israel can hold everyone? What happens if all the Jews in the world come to Israel? Won't we be an easy target? It's amazing the confirmation bias that people come up with, the ideas and the justifications. If you come to Israel, if Jews come to Israel, Israel will be infinitely stronger. Where will you live? We'll work that out. Sorry to be a little bit of a Messianic Jew, but let's not forget that 3 times a year, every Jew in the world went to the temple. And the temple held all of the Jews in the world. So yeah, Israel can hold you. We'll be good. And we're going to be an easy target. Come on, we're going to be an easy target. You know what? At some point you have to say, God told me to come to Israel. Enough with the easy target garbage. We got to come to Israel because we're Jews. This is our home. We need you here supporting us. You need here to build an amazing life. It's the place to be. So again, you might not be able to pick up today or tomorrow, but at the very least, look around you, realize you are no longer home, realize you are on an extended business trip, and on business trips you get nice cars, you get a nice hotel, but you're on a business trip, and you're coming home, and you know that. Don't get confused. That is not your home. And I'll just end with one final thought, which is, we all know the famous story of the man who gets on the roof in the storm and says, God will save me, and they send a boat, and they send a helicopter, he says, God will save me, and then he drowns, and he goes up to God and says, God, what the heck? God says, what do you mean? I tried to save you. I sent you a boat and a helicopter. You didn't get on. After 120 years, whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, you're going to go up to God and you're going to say to God, I don't understand. We prayed for the ingathering of the exiles for thousands of years. I begged you throughout my prayers to bring me home to Israel. Why didn't you bring me home? And God's going to look at you confused and say, I didn't bring you home. I sent you elal.com. I sent you nefesh b'nefesh. I made Israel a paradise, a world-leading technology superpower. I made life in Israel incredible. I removed all bureaucracy. I removed everything that used to happen in Israel where I couldn't get orange juice, I couldn't get tuna fish, I couldn't get deodorant. When I came to Israel, I couldn't get tuna fish here. He says, I removed everything. That didn't work. So I sent you anti-Semitism to show you you're not home. You still didn't get on the plane. So this isn't on God. God has made it abundantly clear that you need to come home, and that is no longer your home, and it's time. So if you can't get up right now, today or tomorrow, I get it. But make a plan, whether it's a year plan, a 2-year plan, or a 5-year plan. But I'm telling you, you do not have another decade in the diaspora. You just don't. And if you don't believe me, open a history book. We know how this ends. We see the trajectory. Try to look at it objectively, as hard as that may be, and you will see what is about to go down. Come home. We need you. You need us. You come to Israel, shawarma on me. I'm Yisrael Chai. Come home. What if I don't like shawarma? Can you buy me sushi? Anything you want. Lunch, dinner, on me. You come to Israel. By the way, just to be clear, I say this as a joke. You know how many people I bought shawarma for? Like literally, do you know how many? I think I've probably bought 20 people shawarma already. Made Aliyah and said, and my inbox is full of people who are saying, I want to take you up on that shawarma. So jokes aside, come here, I got you. And by the way, shawarma aside, if any of the other things you find challenging when you come here, finding a job, by all means, hit me up. I will do whatever I can to help. And I've gotten hundreds of people, around 700 people, jobs in Israel, many of which didn't speak a word of Hebrew, many of which didn't have the skills, but I got them jobs. And if you have a hard time coming here and getting a job, talk to me. But yeah, if you don't like shawarma, sushi, pizza, falafel, you name it. The next question actually doesn't have to do with Aliyah, but it's a very heated topic and one that needs to be addressed. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on this, which is the whole draft thing, right? The Haredim who don't go to the army, but more importantly, they aren't Zionist. First of all, I shouldn't say they. There are many Haredim who are not Zionist. I just want to open a little parentheses here and say, the anti-Semites out there love to use the Neturei Karta as their token Jews. These ultra-Orthodox Jews who stand there saying, I hate Zionism, right? They're like, oh, look, even Jews hate Zionism. Listen, buddy, if you're an anti-Semite and you're quoting those guys, maybe do a little research and look into their opinions on other things. Maybe look into the fact that they believe that if you're walking on the street and you see a woman, you should spit in her face. Do you agree with them on that too? So don't be a hypocrite. You want to take them as a reliable, this fringe, tiny little group that represents no one and is condemned by 99% of Jews around the world. You want to take their opinion as something legitimate? Then maybe look into who these people are. Just putting that out there. So the Haredim who don't believe they don't believe in Zionism. They don't believe in the state of Israel. What are they doing here? And the answer is pretty simple. They do believe in the land of Israel. They believe that this land is holy, and they just don't believe in the state. So they don't pay taxes. They don't go to the army, which of course is insane because they have sewage and they have running water, and they have, maybe internet, maybe not internet, but they have infrastructure in their homes provided by the state of Israel. So if you don't believe in the state of Israel, get the heck out of here. But the second part of that question is even more absurd. And this is something that I've only thought about recently, which is the diaspora Jews complaining about either they don't believe in Zionism or complaining about the Haredim not drafting from Woodmere. Dude, are you for real right now? Get on a plane. You have no right to tell them to draft until you draft. And again, if you don't want to go to the army or whatever, come to Israel and do your part. But the reality is there's a whole world out there of quote unquote anti-Zionist Jews. And I'm trying to bite my tongue here and not be too controversial. But let's just say it like this. If you're a Jew who does not believe in Zionism, aka Zion, aka Jerusalem, aka something that is mentioned thousands of times in our scripture and our prayers, if you're a Jew who does not believe in the importance of Zion and the Jews coming home to their eternal homeland, there is something very lacking in your Judaism. And it is very much the equivalent of saying, I am Muslim, but I don't believe in Mecca. Or I am Christian, but I don't believe in the Vatican or the Pope or anything else that's core to Christianity. That is Zionism to Judaism. So if you're a Jew who doesn't believe in Zionism, I'm not exactly sure what kind of Jew you are. So the next question is about some of these, I don't even know what to call them, absurd politicians declaring that they're going to recognize the Palestinian state. First of all, tell them to go recognize Narnia while they're at it. But more importantly, why are they not demanding that the Palestinians recognize Israel? You want to recognize a Palestinian state? Tell the Palestinians, Hamas, Gazans, whatever you want to call them, to recognize Israel. Not one of them agrees that Israel has a right to exist, which is insane. And yet Western countries are declaring, but here's the thing. Who's declaring a Palestinian state? Is it Iran? Iran's not a good example, but is it any Muslim state? Is it Syria? Is it Lebanon? Is it Jordan? Is it Egypt? No. Who's declaring a Palestinian state? The Western countries? So first of all, let's just get this out of the way. This is, it's a real sickness. I call it wokeism, but the reality is that the West has not yet understood what radical Islam is about. And they think they can play their game and appease them. Let's not kid ourselves. Radical Islam has one goal and one goal only, that is to take over the West. So you can give them whatever you want. That is their religious and theological mission in this world. And that's not going to change no matter how much you appease them. But the reality is it's insane to see these Western countries trying to appease radical Islam by giving them a state when their actual Muslim brothers, Muslim countries, have done no such thing. And that is because the Muslim countries understand what the Palestinians are and how they're a menace to society. That's why the only countries taking them in are Western countries and not. How many Gazans has Egypt taken in? Because Egypt has a border with Gaza. 0. Why are they opening their borders to Palestinians? Because they understand what the Palestinians are. The West has yet to internalize what they are and what they're about. And that's why, unfortunately, unless somehow we reverse and 180 this trajectory, which has never happened in history, so it's not going to happen now, the West is in for a very rude awakening. And unfortunately, if things continue at this pace, as far as I'm concerned, Western civilization as we know it has less than a decade left before radical Islam takes it over. See you next week.